When you're unhappy with your cooking results, maybe it's not your fault. Maybe it's your tongue's fault. And you're going to find out how to train your tongue to improve your cooking on today's Carefree Cooks Code. I'm Chef Todd Moore, and this is the Carefree Cooks Code, every Tuesday live at noon Eastern. Here's our challenge. How can home cooks cook freely with creativity, confidence, and pride while ignoring recipes and still impressing themselves and others with what they cook? Well, the answer is found in becoming empowered with how cooking works, using dependable and repeatable methods of cooking that work for any ingredient, for any diet, and any desire, just like chefs do. And we'll know we've cracked it when everyone sees cooking as an exciting and rewarding way to improve their relationships, their lifestyles, and their health through better food and cooking. This is the Carefree Cooks Code. Hey, welcome back to the Carefree Cooks Code, everyone. We are live every Tuesday at noon Eastern, and for all the past Carefree Cooks episodes, all you got to do is go to my video archive on Facebook, on my Facebook page, or on YouTube as well. They're all there. Go back and watch the past episodes, and you may be saying this as well. You're saying I'm a carefree cook because I create my own recipes. I bring friends and family together. I learn every time I cook. I create my own cooking style. This all happens because I practice pro methods and I wind up loving my cooking. That's what we're all about. The Carefree Cooks community here, lifetime members of web cooking classes, and all our friends all over the world who are always asking, hey, what goes with what? Does this go with that? Please tell me what goes with chicken. Does rosemary and tarragon go together? Well, look, anytime your brain is asking what goes with what, it's asking the question of your tongue. Like your brain thinks it's the head, but your tongue is really the head of what goes with what. Your brain can't figure out what tastes good without the tongue, or the nose, for that matter. And come to think of it, really when it comes to cooking, figuring out the flavors that you like or repairing a dish that didn't come out quite right, your brain isn't as smart as the tongue and the nose. And that's what we're going to talk about. But first, I've got a what am I for you today. This is something magnified 90 times, it says. It is something that has to do with food and cooking and our enjoyment of cooking. I hope I'm not too straight on the nose with this one today. Look, one of the reasons, tell me in the comment section below, what am I? What was that? Magnified 90 times. And one of the reasons that I so look forward to getting together every Tuesday at noon is because I feel like I get a weekly opportunity to pay it back. Now, you guys know I was just like you, right? I mean, I came from the same spot. I was a frustrated home cook. I really liked to cook, but now that I'm honest with myself, I didn't know what I was doing. I was pretending that I knew what I was doing, I could repeat a few recipes, like I had a few words I could say in French, or I could play chopsticks on the piano, dun 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 dun, chopsticks. Everybody can play chopsticks on the piano. I could do a little bit of both, right? You know the phrase, just enough to be dangerous? Well, that's the way it was. I played the piano, only one song, and I spoke French like Pepe Le Pew. Oh, ma chérie, come to me with the Casbah, ma chérie. We will make the beautiful music together. Ma chérie, come with me to the Casbah. Yeah, see, it wasn't very good. And that cartoon has not aged well, has it? Hashtag me too, Pepe. Not good, right? Well, that's where my cooking was 25 years ago. And it was fun to do. I enjoyed the cooking part of it, but it was often disappointing. If I'm honest with myself, things would go wrong and I would never know how to fix them. Well, look, you guys all know what happened to me from there, right? I took some ridiculously extreme measures and honestly became quite obsessed and still am with figuring out how cooking works and then sharing it with you. So I think I'm paying it back because I've got some of it figured out, not all of it, but I want you to have an easier journey, you know? Obsessed for 25 years with this stuff. Obsessed for 25 years. I mean, that's what I call real obsession, you know? The amount of time Heather and I have been together, 25 years, perhaps my greatest obsession. And, you know, I really wish somebody had shared some of these things with me that I have since learned, because I was so frustrated with this idea of what goes with what. And, you know, I didn't understand that this whole idea, and it was a constant chase, right? It was a constant, just frustrating journey. Then I thought that if I found the perfect combination of ingredients or spices, then everything would be fine, right? But what I realized is you can't just put Old Bay hot sauce on everything and call it a masterpiece. You know, that didn't solve any of my sauce problems. Well, and plus, you know, thinking that there's some magic combination of herbs and spices or magic combination of ingredients, that just ignores the methods, you know? And that's a disaster waiting to happen. Methods always come first. That's our mantra, right? Cooking by dependable, repeatable methods, that always comes first. But you know, after that, how do you know what goes with what? And how do you know how to fix a dish that just doesn't taste the way you thought it was going to come out? Well, I'm here to tell you that the secret is right on your tongue, you know? Because Western culture tells us that there are whoa. All right. Western culture tells us that there are 4 tastes on our palate. But look, the palate is actually the roof of your mouth. It's the upper surface that separates the oral from the nasal cavities. You don't really taste anything on the roof of your mouth. The receptors for tasting, they're all found on your tongue. But of course, the word palate, it sounds so much more sexy than nasal cavity, right? It's a much better word. And so palate is used as a descriptive term more than anything else. Think about it. A person with very expensive tastes only likes high-priced food. They have an expensive palate. How would you describe someone who can tell the slight nuances in food? Well, they're said to have a well-developed palate, right? How about somebody who likes only fancy food? Well, they have a sophisticated palate. It doesn't mean they taste any better than you do. That's just silly. If you're talking about your palate, you're making this grand overgeneralization. You're making a judgment about yourself and or the food that you choose to eat. And look, I'm not as much concerned about your palate as I am your ability to perceive the differences in flavor in your cooking. That's the important part. That's the important point I want to make today. Perceiving the nuances, the flavors, the contrasts in your cooking. Now, you could call it palate if it makes you feel better. Sounds like a French word, you know? But I want to talk to you about your tongue and what goes on there. But we trace this whole idea of having definable and categorizable senses in your mouth all the way back to Aristotle, about 350 BC. And he cited sweet, bitter, succulent, salt, pungent, harsh, puckery, sour as the basics. That's just too many, you know, to try and figure things out. The ancient Chinese brought these down to just 5: bitter, salty, sour, sweet, and spicy. Japanese add umami, which is like a meatiness or a savoriness, and just about every other culture has a descriptive word for their food, for their cuisine, probably because they need a descriptive you know, think about spicy cuisines or moles or, you know, things throughout Mexico or Europe. They all need a descriptor. So every culture has their own, but I'm going to stick with the basic 4. And, you know, for so many years, the books and diagrams on the physiology of human taste always put these maps, right? This tongue map showing the levels of sensitivity and the differences in tastes on the different regions of your tongue. It's like the five food groups. Speaking of problem with your tongue, right? It's like the 5 food groups. This is what we were all taught as kids. But look, It's just not true. It's stupid. It's just too easy to disprove. Tastes are found in all areas of your tongue, not just this map that everyone has seen. I mean, it's like saying you can only feel heat on your elbow instead of with your fingers. I mean, we have receptors, all the receptors we need all over our body. They're feeling things all the time. It's silly, this tongue map thing. So I have two goals today. The first is to dispel this tongue map thing. That's going to take about 30 seconds. Then for the remainder of the time, I want to show you how you can actually train your tongue so you can make adjustments in your cooking that honestly your brain doesn't really need to be involved in some of these decisions. Remember, it's your tongue that's going to tell your brain what goes with what. So leave your brain out of it. And you know, the reason I can never answer these questions for anyone is because it's entirely personal. You need to figure out what goes with what for you. And once you figure that out, then you can start to create new dishes based on those flavors, and you will have much better skill at recovering a dish that has gone wrong in some way because you change your tongue's perception of it. You got it? Are you with me? Changing your tongue's perception is what we're talking about. Yes? Thumbs, hearts, loves, likes. You're with me? Good. All right. I got some stuff here to do a test. Here's salt, some salt. It's my little salt container. I've got some sugar and a ramekin here. I've got some coffee beans. I've got some, I feel compelled to do this. Rub it on the top. I've got some lime and stuff like that. And we're going to do a little experiment today because according to the tongue map, right, I'm only supposed to taste saltiness on the sides of my tongue. So let's take a little bit of salt, lick my finger, dip it in the salt. Let's put the salt not on the side of my tongue, but let's put it in the middle of my tongue. Yep, still salty. Disproved in 30 seconds, like I said. Now, I could spend a whole lot more time with the salt and with the lime, but I'd have to get some tequila then. This would make it a very long show, but ultimately the results would be the same. This whole idea of sweet, sour, salty, bitter, no matter where you put the food item in your mouth is going to be perceived the same. So the next challenge, now that we've immediately dispelled that, and you can do the example yourself at home if you want, the next is going to be training the tongue to recognize these four categories of tastes. And when you have too much of one, how to go ahead and add another to counteract it, like the salty taste that I have in my mouth right now. The first thing that we need to do is tell the brain, to convince the brain that the tongue is perceiving something that's an opposite, right? The whole idea here is to counterbalance one for the other. Now, I learned this whole concept from my friend Pascal Mierve, the spice store owner in Paris. It was so freaky because Pascal fed me these white peppercorns that he had just gotten in from Madagascar. And he talked about it like he was a dress shop owner in Paris. Oh, I just got the latest peppercorns from Madagascar. He was so excited about it. But this was the thing. He fed me these white peppercorns, crunched down on them, really bitter, right? Really peppery. And then he made me eat a strawberry. And my tongue blew my brain's mind that day. I just could feel it. And Pascal, he kept giving me one thing. Now taste this. Now taste that. I mean, this whole thing, this whole interaction is on my French Food Finds online course and DVD. Those of you that have the course, go back, check out Pascal's shop, Le Epicure Finet, and him feeding me different things and him telling me what goes with what, right? I learned more about messing with my palate, about messing with the flavor perceptions on my tongue in an hour with Pascal than I did in a whole year of culinary school. The guy is an absolute master. It's incredible. So, inspired by Pascal, let's start some tongue training. And that's what I want to do with you today. So we're going to start, like I did a minute ago, with salt. Okay, the salty. And again, no matter where I put it on my tongue, it's going to be salty. So a little bit of salt on my finger, on my tongue. Salty, right? Like I swallowed a bunch of salt at the beach. So, all right, I'm going to close my eyes, and this is what I want you to do. Put some salt on your tongue, close your eyes, and think about a dish that you made that was really salty, that was too salty. Maybe you used some bouillon, some of those horrible dried bouillon cubes. Maybe you just added a condiment like soy sauce that's pretty salty, and you want to tone down this dish. Well, the thing that's going to help you overcome the salty is the bitter. Your tongue is going to confuse your brain like, no, never mind. I know I said salty, but now it's something entirely different. And your brain's going to go, oh, okay, cool. So a lot of times getting these bitter items in there can be accomplished with herbs. So if you had some dried thyme, but you know what? Especially fresh thyme would work. God, even just the smelling of it. You just smell something bitter tasting, like savory, like thyme, and I can already feel that saltiness going away. A little bit of dried herb, or especially fresh herb with the active oils on it. Something like rosemary as well. If I just take a rosemary quill and I have something that's a little bitter, I start to get that salt to go away. How about a coffee bean? Coffee bean, very bitter, and now that salt is just about gone now. You know, and I could go through the whole thing again. Things like turmeric. I got to get rid of the coffee bean. Things like turmeric, ginger, wasabi. You know, they're really bitter. That's why many Asian foods use these flavors, because many Asian foods are even saltier than you're even perceiving, right? They're in there to help tone down that MSG. The bitter herbs, the bitter vegetables. Chocolate is bitter. Think about a mole sauce, right? For chocolate. Coffee beans, like I just demonstrated. And again, you don't have to make your dish taste like coffee. You're just trying to put a little bit in to trick the tongue. Even a small dusting, just a little bit of garnish of coffee or cocoa, unsweetened cocoa, can train the tongue to change the perception, and it can get it to forget about that salty taste altogether. All right? Let's cleanse a little. Next, tongue training. Let's say you're making a tomato sauce, right? Or my lemon scampi. Sometimes, you know, lemons are different. Some lemons are really powerful and very wet. Some lemons are kind of dry. And you put together a tomato or a lemon dish and you get something that's way too sour, right? Maybe your tomatoes were really acidic, or, you know, you added too much lemon to your sauce. It makes you wince when you taste it a little bit. Excuse me, I'll tell you a common mistake. You didn't reduce the wine enough. You know, you're making a tomato sauce, you deglaze with red wine, that's got to be almost all sec. It's got to be almost dry. It's a common mistake. So you've got a very bitter red wine sauce in there. And you know what it's kind of like? Think about that amount of sour. Ooh, it's a little bit like licking it's a little bit like licking a lime. It's really sour. Or how about something like balsamic vinegar, right? Some kind of vinegar. Oh, damn. I kind of knew I would spill a little bit of that. Oh, that's bitter. Some kind of straight vinegar in my mouth, right? Really sour, really sour. And if you want to train your tongue to stop listening to the sour message that it's sending your brain, then you need to interrupt it with another conversation, another message. And this is why Grandma added sugar to her tomato sauce. This is why so many people put sugar in their sauces today. My mouth is watering, salivating. This is why grapefruit juice, cranberry juice, pomegranate juice, this is why they're sweetened. Otherwise, oh my God, they're horribly sour. Have you ever eaten raw cranberries? Oh, they're terrible. I mean, if your tomato sauce is too sour, add something sweet. If your scampi is too sour, add something sweet. But look, I prefer that you actually add something naturally sweet. Instead of putting sugar, I can't take it anymore. Instead of putting refined sugar in your sauce, how about some steamed or poached and then pureed carrots? Carrots are naturally sweet. Maybe you could add some honey. Maybe you could add some maple syrup. to your dish, something that's going to set that off. But again, try and get back to natural. Instead of thyme, which is kind of bitter and earthy, how about basil? Basil's very sweet. Bell peppers are very sweet. Roasted garlic, roast your garlic first. It's very sweet for your tomato sauce. These are all natural ingredients that you can apply when your tongue tells you that something is too sour. Okay. These are the 4 basic examples that I showed you. Salt for salty, lime and vinegar for sour, coffee, cocoa for bitter, sugar or maple syrup for sweet. You've got an entire pantry of items that you now need to go and categorize this way. Do you have Worcestershire sauce in your pantry? Is it sweet, sour, bitter, salty? Do you have maybe a jar of chutney? What is this? Major Gray's apricot or mango chutney. Awesome to use in sauces. I know you got a jar of taco seasoning or something. You probably have some sweet and sour sauce. All these jars and condiments that are in your pantry. Excuse me, my mouth is going nuts. All these things that are in your pantry right now, you should know what their flavors are the same way an artist knows what color the paint is. You know, start training yourself. It's time for your tongue and your brain to start working together so they can repair any cooking gone wrong in the future. What's in your cabinets? Go searching through them. Are they salty? Are they sweet? Are they bitter? Are they sour? Taste them. Taste them all, because then when you're standing over one of your dishes that isn't right, you think, oh, I remember that taste. I'm going to add a little bit of this. The tastes and the senses on the tongue are like the effects of color for a painter. A painter wants you to see the contrast in his or her art, and a skilled cook wants you to taste the contrast in his or her art. And manipulating these flavors is a way to create something incredibly special, or a way to fix a dish that's gone incredibly wrong. And, you know, so often those 2 things go together. It is so funny how often I fix something gone wrong and wind up with something incredibly new and amazing, right? Isn't that where the new dishes come from? Where you fix something gone wrong and you couldn't ever do it again, right? That's why it's a journey, my friends. It's an entire journey toward becoming truly free in the kitchen, cooking with confidence and pride, and always striving to be the most carefree cook that you can possibly be. Look, it's another step you can take in your cooking when you start to think about the taste characteristics of the food that you cook with, because only then can you decide what goes with what. It's you. You decide that, not me. You decide what goes with what. I'll help you with the methods, and then you figure out what goes with what. Let your tongue tell your brain what's going on, and the 2 of them that can get together. Let's see who's putting some excitement on their tongues this week in our Carefree Cooks community. Actually, you know what's been the overriding tone this week? It's really cool. I like this. I'm not anti-restaurant. I want you to support your local chef for sure, but so many of the comments about what Carefree Cooking has done for them this week has to do with how Carefree Cooking has ruined their local restaurant. So many of our Carefree cooks are talking about how the food is better at home. And, well, I'm not going to go into current events, but, you know, when you can assure the quality of the food and know that you cooked it at home, you're most certainly safer and you have a lot more pride. Vicky, this is a great example. She loved a chicken scallopini dish from her local restaurant, but the restaurant closed. So from her taste memory, right, without a recipe, just from her tongue's flavor knowledge and the ability to cook with dependable methods, she recreated this dish, right? She made it herself. Nicely done, Vicky. Really good. Heaven on a fork is what Vicky said. Rebecca made a fresh pasta ravioli, made the pasta herself, made the ravioli herself, made the filling herself, obviously, in a bourbon mushroom sauce. Wait, what? Did she just make me say bourbon mushroom sauce? How did she know that they would go so well together? And how does she know that I would be salivating right now? It is the confidence in what tastes good to you that makes the cooking methods really pop, really happen, and it's stuff like this. Mushroom bourbon sauce. You kidding me? Michael, I'm making that right away. Michael has assured the fact that he's going to be eating hot lunches for the coming week with a big pot of minestrone soup. And when you make a big pot of soup like this, how do you know how much to put in? How do you know how much to add? How do you know what to put in? You trust your tongue. And if you know what your tongue is telling you, then you can create some amazing flavor combinations. And by the way, Michael, do I see butternut squash in a minestrone soup? That is an awesome idea. Fantastic. Nicely done. Paul, he's creating a crepe recipe from one of his favorite restaurants far away, can't go there all the time, doesn't want to spend the money, so he makes his own apple chicken sausage, potato, egg, cream cheese crepe with bechamel sauce. And it's really not hard once you know the methods. And then, look at this. Paul should be really proud of this. And if you know the methods, you get a little creativity, you know what's good to you, your tongue talks to your brain, you'll be making stuff better than your local restaurant. Terry doesn't have to go to his local Indian restaurant anymore because he is now making the best chicken curry in town. He said he heated up the pan and toasted the spices first. That's got to be a key. Lemon curry powder, thyme, paprika, cardamom, turmeric, cumin, sliced onions, tomato paste, oil, flour, coconut milk. That's a lot of stuff. How did you know what goes together? How did you know what goes with what? He probably just followed his tongue. He just let his tongue tell his brain what's good. And by the way, I gotta end on this note. Everything I told you today, everything we've talked about for 27 minutes, it's no good. It's absolutely useless. The past 27 minutes have been totally wasted and absolutely useless if you are not tasting your food as you go. You gotta taste. I know so many home cooks that never taste their food when they cook. Look, pour a little bit of what you're cooking into a ramekin. Experiment with new flavors in a little sample before you go ahead and add it to the entire dish. Please, if you don't taste your food as you're cooking, you're not communicating with your tongue, and your tongue can't tell you what to do if it's sitting on the sidelines the whole time, right? I don't know. I thought maybe that would go without saying, but you can't perceive flavors if you're not tasting your food. And hey, speaking of which, what's this a magnified photo of? Well, maybe a little bit too much on the nose or a little bit too much on the tongue, because this is your tongue magnified 90 times. These are your taste buds, the perception of food flavor that's going on today. So, hey, look, if you know someone that doesn't know how to listen to their tongue and they don't know that their cooking might be suffering from it, well, you should share this video with them and give it a like, so maybe a stranger that you don't even know could benefit from it as well. And the 5 skills taught in culinary school that are essential in all of cooking is how thousands upon thousands of home chefs had started their journeys toward carefree cooking, and it's the perfect place for you to start yours too. All this great food that I show you every week, this is all this class, this one right here. This is where all these people started. I got a message this morning. I'm so intimidated. I just started with your community. I'm so intimidated because I see all the photos of what people are cooking. They started in the same place that you did. Maybe you'll be intimidating somebody else, but this class is where they all started. So go to webcookingclasses.com/skills to register for the next class as soon as this episode of the Carefree Cooks Code ends, which is right now, and it's Chef Todd Moore reminding you that there's a method to your cooking success. We'll see you next week at Tuesday at noon Eastern. Bye-bye, everyone.